and gents, welcome back. This is yet another episode of the Iraqi Football Podcast. I'm your host Hassanin Bilal, and I know you're probably at home bored without any football, but that's why we're here. We're trying to bring you up-to-date news on what's happening in the world of Iraqi football, and I'm very fortunate today to be joined by a close friend, somebody who I've worked alongside for a long time, and that is Yousif Al-Khafaji. Yousif, welcome to the show.
Right, Yousef, I want to jump straight into the substance, the meat of the show, which is about Iraqi pro players. Last time I checked, you guys, mashallah, you have nearly 2 million social media followers or something. How has that come about? How did it start? How did you guys grow to be the giants that you are today?
Well, to be honest, it started a while ago. I think now it's 9 years. Um, the way it started was I never expected it will come to this big, but the way it started was it was a hobby of mine. Obviously, my career is in architecture and construction, but ever since I was a kid, I was always into football, just like any other Middle Eastern kid. I never managed to become a footballer for so many reasons, but I always kept up with football. And then my start was with blogging and these online forums. So there was a forum called Quora. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're aware of it. That's where I started writing about football, writing opinions, discussions, and all that. And then from there, I started seeing many people posting about different players. Someone saying we might have a player this place, other person saying we might have a player in this other country. And this was really an interesting topic for me because when I was a kid, I never thought we would have players in Europe, for example. So
Whilst this was happening, you were based in Dubai, right?
yeah, those times I was based in Dubai, and then I just decided that I would start this Facebook page. And those times there was not many Iraqis in social media, Facebook as well. And when I did that, I did also invite two people with me from those forums, which were always active on these topics, expat players. So in the beginning they didn't join, but then eventually they did join me. We started from scratch and just kept growing and growing, you know,
until we reach this level now where I can claim that, or I can say that we're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, football platform in Iraq with the things that we have achieved over the years. So just like anything else, you continue with what you do, you build up on what you have achieved, and then years by years you're always going to develop. So that's it.
At what point did you think that this can be more than just a hobby? When did you realize actually I've created something here that can actually be substantial towards Iraqi football?
Okay, I just think that in 2015 for two reasons. One, because we started creating content from tournaments. So there was a 2015 Asian Cup, and we started creating content for the national team. So it was something unusual for social media to create content by itself for the national team. And second was when I got the sponsorship of Coca-Cola, which was in 2015. So when I got their interest and when I got their sponsorships, I just thought, you know what, this is something that could turn out to be big because I managed and I was successful to get the interest of a global company like Coca-Cola. So it made me kind of spend more time on it, made me more interested, and I thought there's a lot of things to be done in that field. And, I proved to be right as well.
What about in terms of your influence within Iraqi football itself? At what point did you realize you're having a very positive impact on the game and what football is to the Iraqi fans?
Or maybe negative as well.
Some people certainly think that. Believe me, I've had that response from people who follow my website. But let's look at the positives for now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You can never satisfy everyone.
Yeah.
You can never satisfy all humans. That's the nature of us humans. That's fine. Everyone's gonna have their own perspective. But I did think that we're kind of influential by, when we started getting a lot of fans as well. Obviously, then everyone would start thinking, everyone would consider, I would say, what we post, everyone would consider what comes out from this website, what opinions comes out from this website. So there wasn't really a turning point where I just suddenly realized that our website is influential. No, it just happened gradually through time. So as I said, 2015 was a major breakthrough for us, and then every year after that, everything that happened after that, we just we kept growing up, and then we kept becoming more influential, and especially because, as I said, we create content with the national team, and also the news, the articles, the opinions which we publish is all. I would say that is always correct, because we have our inner sources with the national teams. We have our connections, obviously, by working in any field, in any industry for 9 years. You would have connections, you would have people that you speak to, you trust, they trust you. So that's why.
So what would you say is your actual goal for Iraqi pro players? Like, what do you want to achieve overall in the future, and what are you moving towards?
Well, I think I've achieved everything I've wanted for Iraqi pro players as far yet. And I'm very happy with what we've done. We've helped the national team in many different ways, not only players, by the way. We've supported the national team in many different ways. Sometimes it's published, sometimes it's even unpublished, off the records. And that's why people from the national team, they appreciate us. They always welcome us with the national team camps, because they know very well the amounts of help, the amount of support we've given them. Commercially as well, we did well. We got these sponsorships, which by the way also helped us to improve, to expand, because without these sponsorships, you would never be able to travel with the national team, and you'd never be able to create this type of content that we create.
Of course.
Other media outlets, especially TV channels, they always supported by political parties, or they have some sort of fund.
Yeah.
For us, we started from scratch, from nothing. So I can say that we also had a successful business module where we started from nothing, and then we were self-funding, and then now we have some sort of income from these sponsorships, which we fund our content, our works, and so on. So what we want to do next is basically just continue what we do. We expand. We did expand by last year as well. We started creating events. We did turn IQ, Iraqi pro players, which is now IQ, we did turn it into a company as well, which provides services to these companies we deal with. So we did create this major event, if you're aware of it, which was last year.
Of course, in Baghdad, right?
Yeah, in Baghdad.
Amazing event, yeah.
Yeah, so it was the biggest event as such kind in Iraq. So it was a fan zone, the biggest fan zone in Iraq's history. I would say the first one of its kind as well, which I was very proud of. Create something in your own country, something that gets interest of everyone around you, all the fans, all Iraqis. You're very happy when you make people of your own country happy as well. So,
in terms of difficulties that you might encounter running your projects, your website, what kind of problems have you encountered, especially when it comes to like these amazing events? So the one in Baghdad, I remember watching it. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I would have loved to have been, but I was seeing the videos being posted of the fans there, especially if I remember correctly, there was the Iraq-Iran game that was being hosted as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. So difficulties, there's always difficulties, in anything you do, there's difficulties. In terms of the on-ground events, it wasn't the only one. We've done the Best Player of the Year ceremony award. You were there.
I was there, 2015.
2015. So there's always difficulties, these logistics, financial difficulties, the space we had rented for that event, it was quite expensive because it was in a private mall. So we rented the space from them, getting the funds you need, all these organization details which you need, logistics, as I said, it's very difficult. But online difficulties, or the other works which we've done as well, it was also very, very difficult. And the reason why many players appreciate us, is, at least from my understanding, is because they see the amount of hard work we did, and it was really for no gain. All this hard work we did was for the national team. So we're not an agency, we're not agents, we don't charge anyone for anything. We don't charge any athlete when we publish about them. And you see, recently we've created a new platform called IQ Pro X, for individual sports, not only footballers.
Yeah, so like MMA and boxing and whatnot.
Exactly. So we want to repeat the same example, the same module which we followed for IQ Pro, but for other sports, which we believe there's big space to develop in Iraq. Now, I don't want to get in there yet, but we've always faced difficulties. Like many people didn't understand really what we were doing, because it's not very common, right?
Yeah.
Not only in Iraq, to be fair, everywhere, because the services we provide are usually done by agents which charge for these services. Yeah. So many people would think that what are these guys? Are they agents? Are they a TV channel? Are they just a random Facebook page? Sometimes people just wonder, is there anyone supporting them? They have this big ability of influencing, or they have this good financial ability. So they always wonder. But the truth is, it was only good planning and hard work. Simple as that.
Of course. Like you guys you've grown every single year, and you've expanded into different areas, and like we're very proud as Iraqi fans. Well, most of us are proud about what you guys have achieved and how you continue to support the national team by identifying new talent worldwide, by supporting the players themselves that exist within Iraqi football. But we mentioned earlier that there's gonna be some problems that you have to find a way to come across. In my own website, we're nothing in terms of size or scale compared to you guys, but we've encountered a lot of hostility, a lot of people that might, I don't know, disagree with our take on what Iraqi football should do going forward, etc. What kind of let's say difficulties have you encountered in terms of like fans discussion and that sort of thing?
I mean, different sorts. You know, when you deal with 2 million people, there's 2 million different opinions. So very, very difficult. Sometimes it gets very harsh as well. Especially that it targets the national team. The national team is for everyone. It's not for me, it's not for you, it's for everyone, it's for the public. So it represents a whole nation. So it's very difficult dealing with the whole nation. However, we also did get massive support from fans. We did get loads of followers, fans that were hardcore fans of us since day one. But the most difficult times, I would say, was those times when we had disagreement with Yousif Mahmoud, and obviously he's a legend of Iraqi football. So when you have a disagreement or an issue with a star like Yousif, it's never going to be easy because he's got so many fans, and those were very difficult times because so many of his fans were attacking us. But we're cool now. We're fine. It was
Can you give some context as to what the disagreement was over with Yousif?
So basically, it was about the same issue always about the expat players. And to be fair, I don't want to go into details much, but he had his different approach of how to treat these players, or whether these players should be accepted in the national team to begin with, whether they should be accepted or not. So this was a disagreement, and if I think about it now, I think it's normal because it's a new culture, and it's normal in any culture when something new is implemented into your culture or into your workplace or into your society. You're always going to have this sort of feeling that this thing is not welcome, this is new, and especially back in Middle East, it's more common, and accepting new things is not very
easy.
So that's why we had this disagreement with him, and he wasn't really accepting this idea of supporting these players, and him being Iraq's number one star those days. It wasn't also easy for him that not all the media attention was always on him. So we as you said, we were being influential. We were getting more fans, but then we were publishing mostly about these kind of players, not Yousif or the other local players. And the reason was, in those days, literally nobody knew about these players. So we were the only media outlet to publish about them. So we needed that. We needed to support these players. We needed to publish on them. But as you see now, for example, we've learned from the experiences, and now everyone knows and everyone is aware that we have players abroad. We don't really publish about them, if you're aware.
Well, as we were speaking right now, Safat Hadi joined the chat, so clearly it's not just the expats.
No, it's not just the expats. Now we've expanded. We publish everything. We even cover the Iraqi league. But everything has its own stage. So on that stage, we needed to publish. We needed to focus on local for expat players. Sorry, only. But now everyone is aware of them. As I said, we just publish on everyone and everything that relates to Iraqi football.
In terms of your support for the expat players, you've done so much to get them into the national team, etc. How has that situation changed over the last few years? I mean, there was a lot of difficulties then. There seems to exist continued difficulties. What's happened over the years in terms of your perspective and your opinion?
As I said, when I was explaining about the issue with Yunus, it was not really an issue with Yunus. It was an issue with the whole football society.
Mentality,
mentality, obviously, yes. So this mentality wasn't really accepting such players as they would be treated as complete foreigners.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm not going to completely be against them because, these players, they all grew in different cultures. They all have different mentality. So it was always an issue of how do we get them along. Now, getting the players along with each other, that wasn't the biggest issue, to be fair, because at the end of the day, they're just teammates. They have to get along. But then convincing the officials, convincing coaches, local coaches back in the days, FA officials, this was the most annoying bit because if you hold a position like you're an FA member or you're responsible for the national team, I think it's your duty that you be responsible for everyone and you treat everyone fairly, right?
Of course.
And unfortunately, it wasn't the case in many ways.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I have my own ideas as to why these problems existed and continue to exist. But before I actually discuss them, I'd like to hear your opinion on this.
It's mainly because, these players, as I said, they come from far places. They don't live in Iraq. They're not introduced within this football society in Iraq. They don't come out from the Iraqi football system, from the Iraqi leagues. So, and also sometimes it's financial reasons. The FA didn't really have the best financial strategies and management, so they always struggled financially. So these players, those days as well, they would cost the FA tickets and all of that. So it was really a whole series of issues that led to so many issues as well. So many reasons, that led to so many issues. Like so many reasons why wouldn't these players be called up in so many different years? We started by, let's put it this way. If it wasn't for IQ Pro, none of these players would have been called during those days. None of them.
Yeah.
Because simply, there's no scouts by the FA, by the Football Federation, that would go and look after these players. There's no coach that's interested to call them up. There's no FA official that's interested to help out, to be interested enough to know, to be aware of players who play abroad to come help the national team to get them a call.
And there's also the financial limitations there in terms of them being able to actually carry that out, which you guys are taking the burden of.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, of course, I mentioned that. So it was really difficult. So we had sometimes to push throughout the media, social media, which we had, and even on media, we did come out. Me and my colleagues, we did come out in many different TV channels to raise awareness of these players. To say, hey, listen, we've got these talents, Iraqis, who are professional players, professional footballers. They're active in professional leagues in Europe. Why don't we just call them up? Maybe they would help us. And then, again, 2015 was a year which we proved to everyone that we had a point and we were right. Because in 2015 Asian Cup, as all the fans are aware, it's the second best result in Iraq's history in terms of Asian Cup.
Yeah.
And during that year, we had 4 players in the national team. 2 to 3 of them were always starting. So we had Yasser Qasim, we had Ahmed Yassin, and we had Justin as well.
Yeah. And Osama Rashid was the other one.
Osama as well was there. He was a substitute, and he started, I think, one of the games.
Yeah, against Palestine.
So you see, in that year, we did prove that something can come up from these guys. And then Yasser Qasim became, I would say, almost the best player, if not the best player in the national team. He won the Best Player of the Year award. And then after that, Yassin was very good for the national team as well for many years. Justin as well, especially in the past 3 years, he's been the most influential player for the national team. So, so we did prove that there are talents, Iraqi talents abroad that they can actually help. They can actually improve the level. They can actually bring addition to the national team. So that's the whole point of this whole project.
You mentioned the 4 players that were chosen for the Asian Cup in 2015. There seems to be a recurring theme in the Iraqi squad selection where it's always 4 expats that are chosen. Some people say that this is like a kind of a number that the FA have put as a quota to limit expats in the squad. Some people say no, that's nonsense. It's coincident. What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'd like to think it's a coincidence, but then
every single time.
Again. But you know what? I'm not gonna. I don't remember me mentioning that it's done purposely anytime, not on Facebook, not anywhere, because sometimes I'm aware of more details than anyone else in terms of calling these players, because the management of the national team is always in touch with me because they know I'm always there to help, and especially when it comes to calling up these players. So I'm always there to help. They call me for support. I help in the call-ups, in the official letters, and all that. So sometimes, like I would say, let me use 2019 Asian Cup as an example.
Yeah.
And that year, in that tournament, we were supposed to have 6 players.
Okay.
Instead of 4 we had, or 3.
I think it was only 3.
It was only 3.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to have 5. Sorry. No. So we had France.
Yeah.
We had Yassine.
Yeah.
And we had Osama.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then Justin was supposed to be there as well.
Yeah. He got injured, didn't he?
He got injured.
Yeah.
And then we had Soraka as well. So there were supposed to be 5 players instead of 4. But then Justin had to carry out his surgery, had to do the surgery those times, and he didn't join. And then, funny enough, even Hawber Mustafa was in the professional squad of that tournament.
Yeah.
But those are the times where, the coach wanted to give him a chance, but he also got injured. That's why 6th, I remember it now. He also got injured. He fractured his ankle, I think, those days, if you remember. So there were supposed to be 6 players in that team, but sometimes they just got unlucky. Sometimes issues happens with different players at different times. So let's say we have a game next month versus X team, and then we're expecting to have 5 players, 4 players, and then one player gets injured, this other player wants his ticket done in a certain way, then he has an issue, and then he fights with the national team management, and he doesn't end up coming, and then they just remove him from the squad. So there's always these issues that happens all the time.
In terms of, let's say, fights, or maybe fights is the wrong way, let's say disagreements. So there was recently Justin Mirren went on live Instagram, and there was a discussion with another TV presenter about the difficulties he's faced, and the kind of disagreements with Katanich and Frank de Boer, who was then his manager.
Yeah.
What do you think this means for Justin in terms of going forward? Would he be welcome back? Do you think he will come back? And how regularly does this actually happen? Because obviously you're privy to information that happens in the background of the team selections, the management. Fans don't actually hear about it all the time. How regularly do these problems happen?
It happens quite often, to be honest with you, because we don't have the best systems in terms of the Iraqi FA. So in every selection, every time the national team comes together for a game, there's an issue with one of the players. And not only the expats, by the way.
Are we talking logistical or like what?
Mostly logistical. And I don't mean only expats, by the way. There's always issues with different players, all the squad. So this player would have an issue with his passport. Other player would have an issue with his tickets. The other player, they can't get hold of him, and then the person who's trying to contact him takes it personally, and then he fights with him. So there's always these type of issues, and that all comes to, in my opinion, that all comes to one reason. It's because we didn't have a proper system that everyone can follow. We don't have specific laws for these situations.
Yeah, like protocols, right?
Protocols, exactly. So if if you're a player, let's say, and you know what's for you and what are your duties, what do you have to do, how do you have to do it, then you just follow it. But then every time there's a different system, different protocol, different way of doing things. So these issues are always going to be there if things don't get fixed. Now, positively, hopefully now there's new FA. Hopefully things are going to get better. They will improve. They will work on improving these issues. You did also ask me about Justin. You asked me about the future of Justin. Look, the current situation is, to be honest with you, we have a national team and we have a coach who's a foreigner coach. How I see it and how I try to make this opinion the opinion of IQ Pro, because I also have other people working with me in IQ Pro, and it's not always what I believe in 100% goes, as I'm not that much with data. Anyways, so what I think now is we have a coach currently that's achieving the results, at least in the qualifiers, which we all hope for.
Yeah.
And that's it. You really can't do much. It's always this selection. The coach did call up so many expat players in the beginning. He thinks now, from a pure football reason, that it's better for his team that he would go with only a specific type of players. And you really can't discuss much because he's achieving the results which we want. At the end of the day, what we want is we want our national team to make it through the World Cup. We don't, it's not a priority who does it. Obviously, I'll be much happier if X player or Y player will do it. But even the players need to understand this, that when you're in the national team, you need to bring addition, you need to help. There's issues which have resulted in why many players underperformed in many cases. I understand that. That's why we always publish about it. That's why we are discussing right now to remove these issues. But at the end of the day, it's a national team. It's a coach. You can't do much about it, right? It's his decision. He calls up whatever players he wants. And as I said, now he's getting the results we all want. Not me. Not anyone else can say much. Now, if his technique is not working, if his strategy is not working, if he's not getting the right results, then obviously there's something wrong, and then he would need to change his squad. He needs to change his way. However, I do think that players like Justin and even Yasin, I do think they still have a chance with the national team because they're still active. They're still on their good times. They're not very old, and I think that at one point they will be called up again, especially in the final qualifiers when things will get really difficult. We're going to be facing we're going to be facing teams like Japan, Australia, Korea.
Well, that's hopefully if we continue to qualify.
Hopefully,
yeah. So, two kind of questions that leads me to. Number one, do you think we'll qualify for the World Cup realistically? And number two, what have you made of Katanich so far? We know that the results have been good. We know that
only in the qualifiers.
In the qualifiers and within the other cups that we've taken part in.
But listen, in the other tournaments, other cups, which is only Golf Cup.
And the West Asian Cup.
Asian Cup. These tournaments, we would never consider it as a good result unless we get the tournament, unless we win it. So runners up, semi-finals. I don't think it's good enough for Iraqi football in these tournaments.
Even though, despite the fact that we went into the Gulf Cup with most of our players injured and missing, would you?
Look, the Gulf Cup is not an official tournament.
Yeah, of course, course. But I mean, if I'm to defend Katanich, I'd say that the teams we played were very difficult. We played against Qatar, etc.
No. He wanted that squad. No one else wanted it. So he could have called many of the players because all the players in Sweden were available. Players from USA were available as well. You see, Adnan was there. He's from the MLS.
Yeah.
So these players from these leagues were still available for him to call up, but he wanted that squad. So it's his choice. What was your question?
So in terms of let's stick to the World Cup qualifiers. And what have you made of Katanich's performance as manager?
Okay, in terms of World Cup, I think, as you said, results were being good, especially winning Iran. It was the key. It was the highlight of the qualifiers for us so far.
Yeah.
Because winning Iran is always like a derby, so it's always special. Winning Iran and winning Saudi Arabia.
And last minute especially is just icing on the cake.
Last minute. So results have been fine, good. We didn't manage to win Bahrain, but we drew in their home, which was very good. Away points from Bahrain, good 3 points, home points with Iran. But whether we're going to be able to continue this in the upcoming matches, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because I don't even think Qatar would know what's going to happen next, because Corona has happened now. All the football leagues have stopped. No national team matches for a while. And I did speak to a few people in the national team, the management. Even they don't know what's going to happen, and they think what has happened is very, very bad for our national team, because we're in good position now. We're the leaders of the group. Things might twist and change after football returns.
Safat Hadi obviously recently joined his new club, and he's been online posting his training and his new kind of home workouts essentially. Now, this is something I was discussing on my Twitter page, and we were looking at the improvements that Iraqi football will experience, hopefully, as a result of players from the Middle East or from the Iraq especially, moving abroad and getting a better idea of the sports nutrition, the dietary understandings of how to maintain their fitness, how to train and be fit at home. Do you have concerns that when we come back, a lot of the players will be unfit and unable to continue training properly? Or do you think, from your experience with the players, they know enough to be able to come back and be still sharp, etc.?
Well, I did talk to many players, and I asked them about this. And to be honest with you, they can keep fit, they can train at home and everything, but it's never the same. Yeah. They still need football training, because you see when players go off season, they need 2 months off season, 2 months preparations to be ready again, to be fit again for the season. And I do think it will be an issue, not only for us, to be fair, for everyone, because you see players have been at home for a while now, 1, 2, 3 months, no football. It will be a big issue for everyone. And I did read yesterday that FIFA is discussing that for this season they might introduce 5 substitutes rule instead of 3.
Right.
So
for fatigue and injuries.
Yeah, it would allow teams to use more players during those times, because it's difficult times. In terms of when it comes to Iraqi players and Middle Eastern in general, obviously we all know and we're all aware that the way they keep on track, the way they try to keep fit is different from European players, because European players they're used to it. It's part of their daily life routine, their diet as well. In Iraq, our diet is not really
having bagel bidin for breakfast, for example.
Yeah, it's not the best. We all know, for example, I'm trying to get fit, and then you come home, you see all this Iraqi food. It's not very easy.
Dolma, paji.
Yeah.
Right. So, Safat Hadi, he's been working hard. Ali Adnan recently also came out, and he had a live chat with a girl from Doha. I have no idea who she is. First time I see her. But on that chat, the question they asked Ali was about his fitness, and they were asking him about the fitness issues he struggled with, and this has been something that has been present. I've noticed it, I've commented on it. Ali Adnan comes out and says that this is not his fault, this is the fault of the Iraqi FA, the poor planning in terms of fitness coaching, etc. What did you make of those comments?
Well, no, it's normal. This is what I already mentioned to you earlier. There's always going to be issues. And look, sometimes people think that players are like robots. So sometimes most of the fans perhaps only judge on what they see during the game. So they don't really know how did this player get to the national team, what struggles did he go through, what is he feeling, at the end of the day, players are humans, they will get tired, they can get emotional about some stuff, when they don't, when a person feels that they're not treated right, you can never expect them to perform the way you want it.
Of course.
So when Adnan moved to Canada, and even when he was in Italy, he did also face a few difficulties in the national team. So you know why? That's because when he joined these teams, he would see major differences in the way he's treated in his club and how the football system is in Italy or in the MLS, and then he compares it to Iraq, and then he starts thinking, what are we doing in Iraq? This is not how we do things. So it's normal, and this is why many of the players who play in clubs abroad, they don't even perform well in the national team, because you know what? Let's say you're a player in Sweden or in Portugal, and then you have a game with the national team in Thailand. You need to count the flying hours. You need to count how many hours do you need.
The layovers.
Jet lagging, to get used to the new country, the weather, and everything. So this is always an issue, and we don't. Obviously, it's an issue for everyone. But then someone might say, "But don't other players from other countries fly the same way?" Yes, they do. But the difference is, first of all, they fly with the first class ticket, with the business ticket, with the fastest routes, and then everything they need will be provided to them. But for us, in many cases, the players would fly in an economy ticket, where a kid next to him is crying.
The seats are cramped.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. So again, Justin, we mentioned earlier, he was talking about how his flights from the US all the way to Iraq or wherever the games were, in Qatar, for example, they would normally involve like 3 layovers. And I've seen, for example, some of the flights that these players take. They've sent me like pictures. They've asked me not to share it, which is why I haven't posted it anyway. But like the chairs that they are sat on, this much legroom. So of course, a player that goes through all that flights, all those layovers, they can't be expected to perform at their peak.
This topic has been a big issue. Has been very annoying topic for me, especially for the past 5 years. And I reached this level where I don't even bother myself anymore to be annoyed much, because it happens every single time. And every single time, players, they would just contact me firstly, and they would complain. They were like, what's this ticket? How are people going to expect us to perform? And look at our ticket. How do they expect us to do well while we're being treated this way and that way? And always, every time, it makes the players feel unfair. And we did try to say this. We did try to bring it up in media. We did try to bring it up to the FA officials. But then they would just say, listen, this is what we got. Whether you like it or not, accept it or not, this is what we got. If you like it, if you can cope with it, you're welcome to come and play. If you don't like it, no one's forcing you to come and play. Simple answer you get.
They claim that this is to do with like lack of finances, etc. Me and you, we've discussed like one of the main reasons that Iraqi FA struggle financially, and we said it's to do a lot with just not being able to utilize what they have, and we discussed in terms of ways that they can actually be using the Iraqi league to be making money, etc. What are your thoughts on like ways they can actually start developing projects to fund themselves, fund better flights for their players, etc.?
Well, the problem is with the previous FA, they did face many problems, but their biggest issue was they were too busy fighting their opponents. They were too busy trying to keep. They were too busy trying to stay in their positions. So they didn't really focus much on developing the football. And I'm gonna doubt as well their ability of developing the football, because a football association doesn't only consist of football players. For example, it's a whole company. It's a whole organization. So you would need football experts. You would need marketing experts. You would need different sorts of
financial, marketing.
Obviously. So I think the FA really lacked these positions. I don't think they've done it the right way. The only way they were doing it is by requesting the government for funds for the national teams to travel each and every time. They never really made money from national team. They really made money from the league. They really made money from anything. And it's funny how a Facebook page, a website like mine, or like even others, they can manage to get sponsorships and funding. But then an organization like the FA, which holds the complete copyright and legal rights of the football in Iraq, they can't manage to make any funding out of it. It's crazy, you know.
Of course.
So whatever excuse we want to give them, I don't think it would be enough.
Yeah, I mean, we try to approach this from, let's say, a fair and impartial perspective without sharing our own opinion about the Iraqi FA. Of course, I feel a very certain, specific way about it, but for your sake, I'm going to try to avoid the words I'm thinking of, which is khammata. But let's ignore that for now. In terms of the... what was I going to ask you again? It's completely gone out of my mind. Oh yeah, sorry. In terms of your role in the Iraqi FA, do you think that you like what's the extent of your power within Iraqi football? I should ask, because you get. I'm sure you're aware of it. Actually, I'm sure you're aware of it. A lot of people accuse your association of being too powerful, of being what they call maslahchiyya within Iraqi football. How would you fight these accusations?
Now listen, it's, as I said, it's no secret that we started our platform supporting these players. We were the only platform to actually publish on these players. It's no secret. Now, we tried to explain many times that we're no agents, we make no money from this. We did make funding from sponsorships. We made it very clear. Our system is very clear, very straightforward, nothing to hide. But then, with all of these things that we raise, all of these points we try to explain, if you still doubt us, then I don't think the issue is with us, because maybe there's an issue with your understanding of things. And I don't think it's smart of us, for example, to be agents with all this power we have, and then we don't even announce it, because we would simply just go to every player and then tell them, listen, sign us, and then we get you a good deal or something, right? So I don't think it's a smart idea of it. Again, of course, we're effective. I'm not gonna lie, because we have 2 million followers. 2 million people are aware of what we publish, of what we say, read to what we publish. It's normal. But then I don't think we went extreme at any point where we were harm for the national team or something. At the end of the day, this is media, and I'm sure you see football that come on TV. You see the way they speak, the way they bring topics up. I think that's an issue, not us, not our platform. This is all I can say, really. I can't just spend all my life explaining my point, explaining where I come from, explaining what we do. And again, it's a human nature that we focus on negative things, so it's normal. You know, when you hear 1, 2, 10, 100 negative opinions, they will stand out even from a million positive opinions. It's normal. Like, what else can we do?
Of course. You mentioned earlier about Ali Adnan in terms of his experiences going abroad and getting a better understanding of how football is played with Udinese, Atlanta. Now he's in Canada with Vancouver. And with him now experiencing football at a different level, a more professional level, I was discussing earlier on Twitter how I hope that with players going abroad, like Mimi and now in Portugal, with Safat Hadi, for example.
Let me tell you about Safat Hadi, because Safat, he's a good friend of mine, and I did, and there's a mutual trust between us, and he does share his opinions frankly with me on different sorts of topics. And Safa, he's a national team star, obviously. He's a starting player for the past 1 year in the national team. He got his move to Russia. Russian Premier League is the 6th or 7th top league in Europe, very good league.
Yeah.
So what he tells me is he saw massive differences from the system he came from, Iraqi league, Iraqi football system, and what he saw in Russia. He was surprised at everything he saw, and to him, he said, "This is going to change me completely as a person and as a player to the better," because he in such a short time he learned so many stuff. He learned so many different details of football, which maybe he was not aware of back in Iraq.
Is there any one particular area he mentioned as like the biggest thing that stood out?
He's mostly amazed by the system they have there. He's like...
and the organization.
The comments. Yeah, we get back to the comments. Ahmed is saying amazing stuff about me, but I don't think I deserve all of that.
We appreciate it, Ahmed. Thank you very much.
Anyways, so Safa kept mentioning to me that the organization they have, the way their system works, the way how everything is in place. He's very amazed. He's like, wow, where did I come from? He can't believe it. He's like, everything is well planned for us. The way we eat, the way we wake up, the way we train, what type of training we have, the way all the logistics done for me as a player, the way they make me feel my value, because he's a player and footballers usually become stars, and then stars also have to be treated in the right way. In Iraq, I don't think we have the right mentality to treat stars in the right way.
So do you think the next step for Iraqi football, inshallah, is that we get more players going directly from the Middle East, from the Iraqi League abroad, yes, and that will improve the kind of the understanding of football, of training, of
yes,
welfare?
Yes, I hope so. And I think so as well. Because, you see, now we have Safa, we have Mimi. They both wanted to follow the footsteps of Adnan.
Yeah.
Very good, very bright example. We would have now the younger players who would still want to do the same thing, who would look up for these players, who would still want to go to Europe. And now you see, we have social media, so even a player in Iraq would really be aware of stories to players like Muhammad Salah or these other players. So everyone's dream now is really to make it to Europe. And another important point is all Iraqis watch European football now, watch Champions League, Premier League, La Liga. So if you're a young footballer in Iraq, you would always look into these leagues and you would want to say, oh, you know what, my dream is to play in these leagues one day, and you would always want to work for it. And this was the main motive for Safa, to be honest, and even for Mimi. It's always their motive. Safa's dream is to play in one of the top leagues, top teams in 2 years. And he believes he can do it because, before he told me So he was telling me 2 years ago his dream was to move to Europe, and he made his dream come true. And now his next dream is to move to a top European team. So this is when you have faith in yourself, you have this right motive, and you have the right tools to do it. We don't have the best tools in Iraq, but I think motivation is very big in Iraq for the players. Another reason is because many players, young players, they did see how careers of many of the older players ended. The older players, they spend most of their lives in the Gulf region, and they didn't really make much out of it. They were national team legends, but then they would only be playing in Qatar, or UAE. But then maybe they could have played in Europe. They could have played Champions League. You see, we had Hawa, for example. He played in Champions League.
Scored in the Champions League.
Scored in the Champions League. So if Hawa could do it, Safa and Mimi, they made it to Europe. Ali Adnan did it in a top European league. I'm sure other players could do it as well.
So there's a few things I want to touch on there that you've mentioned. It's very interesting points. You mentioned, first of all, players that amazing in the national team, didn't quite do it on the club level because they decided to stay within the Khalij. The ones that come to mind are Yunus and Neshat, obviously. Neshat, although he moved to FC20, He's a friend of mine. We talk regularly, and he tells me like his biggest regret is leaving 20 so soon after he got injured. Yunus again's another one. I mean, what do you know about Yunus as to and why he didn't go to one of the big leagues? I mean, back in 2007, there was this rumor. I'm pretty sure you've come across it as well that he was interested in going to, I think it was Marseille,
No, Lyon.
Lyon, and he didn't go because he couldn't take his family. Is that true or?
Yeah. Yeah, he confirmed it. He did say leaving at a young age.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So back in the days, until now, actually, until recent, we never had this culture of young players leaving their families, leaving very far away from Iraq to go try their luck abroad in Europe. We can't compare it to the stories of Northern African players because Algerians, Moroccans, they were always in Europe since a long time. You see, it was way easier for them always to make it through to Europe and to transfer. But for us, Iraqis were not in Europe until recent. So now it's way easier. You see, now when Safa goes to Russia, there's many Iraqis around in Russia, which can help him, makes it easier for him. When Mimi goes to Portugal, I'm sure there's going to be a few Arabs as well that you get to know.
No, Osama Rashid's there now, so.
You see, and now there's social media, it's easy to communicate with your family, but back in the days, it wasn't very easy. It wasn't very easy at all. Now, these are the reasons which are outside the football pitch. Let's speak football reasons as well, football-wise. It's also difficult because when you come from Middle Eastern football system, Middle Eastern football play Asian as well, it's very, very slow compared to European football.
Yeah.
And I think speed is the key thing in football now. Why do you think? Why is the Premier League considered the best league in the world? Because in my life, I've been to many matches. I would say I've never seen speed like the one it is in England. Everyone is just very quick. Everyone is very powerful, strong. You see, you don't have the time you need with a football. Every time someone's tackling you. So football in Europe is way different than football in the Middle East because of this. It's way faster, way stronger. You don't have the time you need when you have the ball. As in Iraq or in Saudi, in Qatar, let's say you're a midfielder, you have all the time you need when you have the ball. You have all the time you need to decide what to do with the ball. So this is a key difference as well. That players really need to adjust to when they come to Europe. They need to learn how to be quicker. They need to learn how to be stronger. That's really the main thing.
So what have you made of Mimi's move to Portugal so far? Because that's a very good example of somebody going from the Qatar in the Iraqi league, where Portuguese league 100 times faster. What did you make of his few performances? Didn't play much.
Well, in IQ Pro, we had a statement from his coach, from his assistant coach, which is also Iraqi, if you read it. He said it better than me. He said Mimi is a very good talent, but he needs more time in Europe. And I really, really, really wish Mimi doesn't go back to Middle East. He needs to wait. He needs to wait for his chance. He needs to adapt because he can't really adapt in 1 month or 2 months. No. You see, even big players sometimes fail to adapt in the first season. They need a whole season or two. A friend of Hazard, last time I was there, he was telling me that Hazard was really complaining about the system in Spain. It's different from England, about how everyone's tackling him in Spain. But then Hazard was telling him that Hazard was saying that by next season, everyone's going to see Hazard like the top star in Real Madrid. So even top stars sometimes struggle. So I really hope Mimi gives himself a fair chance. I do speak to him, to his family, and I do tell them this, and I'm sure he knows this as well. He knows the value of European football. His club, the one he's in now, although he's only a lone player, they believe in him. If I was him, I would be be kind of extreme, and I would even stay with my club even if they go second division.
Yeah.
It would really help boost my confidence and get used to that system. But I don't think he would do it. And also, Mimi was supposed to transfer to Celtic. I did insist the last day that he would move to Celtic, and they did offer him an official contract. They did everything for him. He did the medical for Celtic in Qatar, but he never got the work permits, so they just had to move him to Portugal. And I think he still has a fair chance to move to Celtic or to Scotland. Mimi's got a good chance in Europe. What's Mimi's best characteristics? It's his speed. He's got the power. So these are the main two things needed in Europe. I think with just the right mindset, the right way of doing things, he can make it in Europe. I hope he stays in Europe. And I do believe in him. He's a good talent. He's a very good talent. He could end up being our greatest striker in the history of Iraq, because he's young, and at his age, his scoring percentage is very high for his age compared to other players when they were in his age.
He scored big goals as well, not just a random against other small teams.
Exactly, he scored big goals. So, for example, Yunus or Hussein Saeed, I think they had less scoring percentage when they were in his age. So Mimi has really got a good chance. He just needs to keep going, Football is about constancy. Football is all about being constant and trying to perform the same way in different seasons. So
Mimi actually mentioned earlier, Mimi on his live, he talked about how there was actual offers from Juventus, offers from and Man City. He confirmed that. I knew there was, but when he confirmed it, that was kind of like the seal. But Mimi refused to actually talk about some of the difficulties as to why those moves didn't go ahead. Would you be able to shed any light into that?
Okay. Mimi did have real offers.
Yeah.
He had something like 15 real offers from different European clubs. And I was aware of them because I was speaking to his agent, and he shared many of them with me.
Yeah.
And the Juventus offer, the real official offer, we exclusively published it on IQ Pro from our inner sources. It was a real offer. They wanted to sign him. But why did Mimi go to Qatar? His choice, his family as well, his choice. Qatar's offer was way more than any of the European sides offer. One thing. Another thing is his club, Sherpa Club, wanted him to go to Qatar more than anywhere else. So
was that financially motivated?
Yeah, of course, financially motivated. So Sherpa really advised him, and I can't say push, but they were happier with the Qatari offers. So they told him to go to Qatar as well, and he listened. And Qatar's offer was the best out of all the other offers as well.
There was also like last minute complications with Safa Hadi's move? Was that similar for him with the Shurta?
No, with Safa is different because the thing is with Mimi, Mimi is a player of a Shurta since he was young, so he came out through the football system of a Shurta. But with Safa, he only stayed there for half the season. He came from Al-Zawra, but then look, I don't want to speak much about Safa's issue with the Sherpa, but they didn't treat him the right way. They didn't treat him well. They were not really. They were not really helping him a lot. And I remember once on Twitter, someone was commenting, and he refused to believe what I was saying on this matter. And he was saying, why would Safa not say this? He wasn't believing what I was saying. And then next week later, Safa comes live on TV and says it all himself. Safa's moved to Russia. I was involved since day one. Day by day, I was there. I knew each and every single detail, and I do think that Sherpa should have treated Safa in a better way. This is all I can say.
I've got so many questions to ask you, but I want to wrap this up without taking too much of your time, Yousef. But it's always amazing speaking to you. I'm always learning a lot about football, getting your own thoughts about the game, etc. It's always fascinating to chat. Just a few more questions. In terms of difficulties, which player would you say has did you experience the most difficulties with in terms of getting them to the national team? Is there one player that faced a lot more scrutiny than another, or is there nobody that stands out?
There's always difficulties, but Justin was really difficult because his legal case was almost impossible. His hometown in Nineveh, next to Mosul, it fell under ISIS control a few years ago.
This was under 2015, right?
2014, and all the records of his family were burned down by ISIS, and they couldn't really find any trace of him. So we couldn't really prove that he was originally Iraqi, except for expired old passports and some paperwork which his parents has. But you know how the system in Iraq is. Even if you have a passport, they have to go to a sijil. A sijil is something like the record of your family. So every person in Iraq has a record in this government record to trace where you come from. So they couldn't find that for Justin. We stayed in his case for a full year, just trying to fix his paperwork. We had a huge social media campaign. We got TV channels involved. We got politicians involved, members of parliament, minister of sports as well. He really helped back in the days. Abdul Hussein Abban, and I really need to mention him. That minister was always supportive of in different topics. He was. I think he was a good minister. He supported athletes. Personally, I had some, he helped in the issues like the one of Justin. So yeah, I think Justin's issue was the most difficult one in terms of getting his paperwork done from Iraq. In terms of convincing a player to come play for Iraq, I think the most embarrassing or difficult situation I've been through with the player was Rawis Lawin, if you remember him.
Yep, I do. So Kurdish origins, yes?
Yeah, so Rawis Lawin, he was a player from Sweden, and he played in Denmark. He was with the Danish champions.
Yeah.
And we spoke to Zico, and Zico decided to finally call him up. He wanted to call him up.
We're talking 2011 here, right?
12. And then the player initially agreed, and he would say he would join the national team. So they would send him a ticket and everything, a call up. So he would come to Iraq, finish his paperwork, and play with Zico for the national team. And then everything was fine, And then out of blue, the player just comes up and says, "Sorry, I can't show up for the national team. I can't join." And this was a really difficult moment for us because it put us in a very bad situation in front of Zico and the whole national team stuff. This was a very difficult time as well for me, I remember. G1 as well. We've always wanted G1. We've always wanted G1 to come play for Iraq. There was always difficulties because the thing is with G1, he was always in Sweden before we even knew he was Iraqi. So he was always with the Swedish national teams since he was 15, 18, 20, 22, 23. He was always called up for Sweden. So he was always playing for Sweden. And we always wanted him for Iraq as well. But let's not be too perfectionists. I think if anyone was in his position where he was raised in Sweden, he played for their national team since a young age. It's not very easy choice you make to give up Sweden and come join Iraq. He was raised in Sweden, right?
Of course, yeah.
He played for all the national teams. But to be fair, I'm going to say this for the records. Since day one, G1 was always open for Iraq. He was always open. He never said, "No, I don't want to play for Iraq," or any of that. No, he was always open, but he was with Sweden. Until this moment came where he decided... and by the way, 2018 World Cup, he was in the squad for Sweden. He was in the 30-man squad for Sweden. So it's something massive. He was going to get a World Cup career with Sweden. It didn't happen. He was not in the final squad, and then he thought it was the right choice to come play for Iraq. And I don't see anything wrong with that. if any player, anywhere, any person who can help Iraq, can help the national team, we should always welcome him.
Of course.
For our own good, not for his, right?
Yeah.
So finally, after many years, G1 decided to play for Iraq. We informed Katanich, the national team. They were happy as well. They gave him a call up straight away because, a player like G1 with a very good CV, played in Bundesliga, played European football. They called him up, but again, things didn't go the way we hoped for. And I don't want to speak on G1 and expats. I read a comment from Ali Al-Asad. He asked about Bashar as well, and I think when I read that comment, I remember something that every player that comes to joins the national team, they always tell me about Bashar. By the way, they always tell me Bashar. Some of them, they even say Bashar, we think he's the only player that can make it in Europe because he's very talented. Bashar Hussein, he's very skillful, and he really have improved when he went to Iran. And I think Bashar is definitely one of the players that can easily make it. Not easily, but he can make it in Europe. He just needs to work on his physique a little.
And we started now talking about like the players that are going to hopefully take us to the next step, which takes me to one of the final questions I want to ask you today, Yousef, which is, what are the future stars or the future players for Iraqi football, and who have you identified as the players you now want to bring forward to the national team?
Well, we have the Olympic team players, which never really got the right chance to play in the Asian tournament.
Why was that?
Different reasons. Paperwork. Amir was in the team. He scored in the only game he played.
It was not even. It was like he came on as a substitute, barely a full match.
Yeah, he scored. But Amir Al-Amari, he's a very good talent. I think he has a good future with the national team. But then he was not ready in that tournament according to the national team staff. So they said physically he was off season as well in Sweden. So this was an issue. Other players, I think Ali Al-Hamadi, I think he's a very good talent. He plays for Swansea now. The only thing Ali needs is first team football. So I really hope he goes to a loan, League 2 or something, plays first team football. I think it's going to help him a lot and boost his confidence and his level a lot. We have, as you see in my right connection shirts, we have Ahmed Hassan from Denmark. I think he's a good striker as well. And then we have the most talented one, Lu'ay. Lu'ay is an amazing talent, very skillful, but Lu'ay needs to do things in the right way. So I think Lu'ay needs to put his mindset in the right path and then put his thinking together, because I think Lu'ay has a great future. And I think these players in general are the future of Iraqi football. And of course, there's few young talents always in the Iraqi league. Iraq is a wide Iraqi. Football is a wide thing in Iraq. It's the most popular sport in Iraq. Everyone plays football in Iraq, so there's always going to be new talented players. And it's just that we need the right system to qualify these players. You see, a player is like a product, is a final product. We can't always treat players as a core material, as a raw material, which we just got. Our raw talent come from the sea playing the national team. This was kind of an issue for Iraq. We need to change this, and I hope the new federation would know this, because the 2007 national team, which we were all happy with, players there, we call them legends. They won us the Asian Cup. How did that happen? That didn't just happen out of blue without planning. No. These players were with Amu Baba since a very little age. They were training since a very little age. They got together. They went through so many different tournaments. And then back in the days, in 2000, late 90s, there was much better football system in Iraq. There was the youth football leagues, where a young player can get playing time. These are the steps which we need to improve our level. You see, I was with the Olympic team before the Asian tournament in Bahrain, and I have a good connection with him. I have a good relation with him, Abdul Ghani Shahad. And then he was complaining a lot about the fact that young players in Iraq don't even get playing time. Real young players in Iraq don't get playing time. you'd be surprised that the Iraqi league, 20 teams, you could even barely find any players under 23 playing. Everyone is just with not real age, and then everyone else is older.
That's mostly because they don't have a youth system or reserve squad or reserve league, so the only players actually play are the first team, right?
Exactly. So they would train and then come play first team, and then before that they would come from Farikh Sha'bi, amateur teams with their friends.
Yeah.
Teams of their areas, and that's it. Someone asked an important question. I just wanna. Greasy, I think. I don't know who's that, but he asked about goalkeepers.
Well, Noor Sabri is retired now, so he's out of the equation.
Yeah, I don't think we have. I think we have an issue with the goalkeeper position in Iraq, to be honest with you, because even in Europe we don't have much keepers.
The only one I could think of is the kid in Poland who's recently joined the big team there, but I've heard he's not amazing.
That player.
Qais Al-Ani, that's his name.
Qais Al-Ani. The issue with Qais Al-Ani is he doesn't really have any professional experience whatsoever. So he's only played youth system. He never really got first team football in a professional league. So he's played first team football in an amateur league, and now he's back to his original team, his original academy team. Yeah. But they did register him in the first team squad. But I don't think he's going to play it, to be honest with you. So I really wish him the best. I think he's still young. He still has a lot ahead of him. But obviously, I don't think he's ready yet for any national team football, not Olympic team, not first team national team as well.
My final question, Yousef, which is... Sorry, hang on. Before we even go to the final question, you never mentioned Peter Guargis. I want to know what you guys are doing about him.
Oh, yeah. Peter is an amazing talent.
For Brighton right now, he's made his league. He's made his debut for them in the League Cup. Still not in the Premier League.
Peter is an amazing talent. I think he has a potential to be a world class player. Right? He's young. When he was in Sweden, he was acing it. When he came to England, he's doing very well with the under 23s Brighton. He had his debut with the first team football in Brighton. He had an assist in his debut. Very good player. Now your question is about Peter and Iraq. I think this is the part where it gets tricky. I have a very good connection with his dad. We always talk. To be honest with you, I don't think Peter is anywhere close to represent Iraq at this moment. Currently, he's still in Sweden.
Do you mean he's not close in terms of what he wants to do, or do you mean in terms of like his quality right now as a footballer?
No, not quality. No. I think Peter's quality is not doubtful. Like nobody can doubt his ability, because when you're at that stage, at that young age, and then you move to England, I don't think anyone can doubt his ability. But currently he's in Sweden. Again, he's already with their national team system. Australia is in the line as well. They want him. But in terms of Iraq, we would really try to work hard. When we first scouted him, I really pushed for him to get a chance with Iraq, or to get him in touch with Iraq. So I did get him in touch with the national team, with the team manager of Iraq, Basi Gorgis. So I made them speak together. They got to know each other. But at this stage, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Peter is going to represent Iraq at this stage. I do hope that one day this will happen, because Peter's best friend is playing for Iraq now, which is Amir.
Yeah.
And if Amir gets the chance to play first team football in Iraq, it's going to make Peter. It's going to make it way easier for Peter to change his mind and come play for Iraq.
Inshallah. I think it's quite tough right now for Iraqi footballers, where they see, as an expat, I know if I was a footballer, I'll be looking over at the FA, looking over at the problems current players they're facing there, in terms of getting minutes, in terms of actually being treated fairly, you might say, and it would put you off from joining them. So he's currently probably very likely to join Sweden and play at a very high level. I think it's going to be very difficult to sway him and convince him to actually join the Iraqi side.
There's I don't want to go much into philosophy, but you know what? I think every human has the right to look for a better opportunity, right? and players are humans. They're no different than any of us. So me and you and everyone else, every Iraqi, every human always looks for the better opportunity for themselves. Our families moved abroad for a better opportunity. It's the same story with these players. You see, for example, Bassam Al-Rawi. Let's ignore the fact that he scored against Iraq and that issue happened. But Bassam Al-Rawi, he grew up in Qatar. He was in their football system, and he got his opportunity in Qatar, and he played for Qatar. To be honest with you, I don't think there's something wrong. I don't think much is wrong with that, because he got the opportunity there. His home country never really called him up. He played for Qatar. Simple as that, right? Any other player, even G1, he played for Sweden because he grew up there. He got the opportunity. He took it, right? So I think us as football lovers, we really need to understand this. We need to excuse these players. They got the opportunity in these countries. If they choose to represent another country, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Because who told you? Maybe even players in the Iraqi league, if they got an opportunity to play for other countries, maybe they would do it as well. You never know. But they just really never got the opportunity. So we just really have to be fair to the players. You have to excuse them because, at the end of the day, even these countries have spent money on them. They took them as refugees. They helped them. They have a career because of them. So why not represent them as well?
Of course. And they must have friends within the national team and people that could persuade them to join. So obviously, it is going to be difficult. Yousif, my one final question. This is something somebody asked me online and it got me thinking, and I want to throw this question back at you. If you could have any player join us from the Iraq 2007 team and put it in this current team, who would it be and why?
I think that team was successful because it was a team, to be honest with you. To be honest, I would choose, because now we have a striker, which is Mimi. He's scoring goals.
Yeah.
We have Safa and Adnan, and we have many midfielders as well, which are doing fine. But I think we always have an issue with the defense now. So if there's one player I would choose, I think it would be Ali Al-Hayma, to be honest with you. Because we never got any player, not even close to Ali Al-Hayma, to be honest with you. لأنه he is this type of defender which Iraq really lacks. He's the type of defender which can organize the ball from behind. He can attack. He can play in different positions as well. So I would choose Ali Al-Hayma. I mean, obviously Nashat and Yunus are the top stars, like no doubt. But I have sometimes my own thinking of football because I think that in Liverpool, I think Salah and Mane are amazing. But if it wasn't for Van Dijk, I don't think they would win the Champions League. So I think defense is very important. I would go for defense.
That's very interesting because the player I would have picked for me is Nashat Akram. But my question would if Safat wasn't here, would you say the same thing?
No. I would say.
No, I'm joking.
You give me one player with this team. So I'm thinking this team. What's the weakness of this team? That's the defense.
Yeah.
So the attack is okay with this team. We're scoring goals. Midfield is also okay nowadays. We have position in many games. We can keep the ball around. Our weakness now is defense, right? So that's why I choose. If you give me top 3 stars, obviously it's very easy to choose Yunus, Nashat, and Al-Hayma.
Amazing. Yousef, I don't know how to thank you, man. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. So it's like a book of knowledge of Iraqi football, always fascinating opinions. And I'm so happy to have you on the show. Hopefully it's the first of many appearances, inshallah. And hopefully we could also meet face to face once this quarantine is over. Stay safe in the meantime. Try coming up with new projects. I look forward to seeing what else you post. Have you got anything in mind you're going to build soon?
Actually my new projects are kind of away from football for a while. It's going to be there might be something which is football related in Iraq and architecture. I can't say it now, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it will happen. Let's see. And likewise, by the way, I'm very happy for this chat we have. I wish you all the best, and I hope and I wish your website expands as well. You're doing very nice work. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here with you. Thank you again, Hassanin, for this time. I think it was a nice chat. Thank you for everyone who joined us.
Yeah.
Looking forward to see you as well.
Thank you so much, Yousef. All the best, man. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And that's that, guys. We'll be back hopefully in a couple of weeks with another edition of the Iraq Football Podcast. In the meantime, stay safe. Find us on social media. Get in touch. We want to hear from you. Remember, on Instagram and Twitter, the new handle is at Iraq Football Pod. In the meantime, look after yourselves and Yalla ya Iraq.